The night before the Challenger launch, an engineer named Roger Boisjoly sat in a conference room and begged the people in charge not to launch. He had the data. He had the charts. He had spent months warning anyone who would listen that the rubber seals on the rocket boosters would fail in cold weather. They listened, they nodded, and then they launched anyway. 7 people died, 73 seconds later. And here's what makes this one of the most studied disasters in human history. Nobody in that room was evil. Nobody wanted those 7 people to die. Every single person involved was intelligent, experienced, and trying to do their job well. So what happened? The answer has nothing to do with the O-rings. January 27th, 1986. One night before launch, the temperature at Kennedy Space Center was dropping toward 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Roger Boisjoly was an engineer at Morton Thiokol, the company that manufactured the solid rocket boosters. For months, he had been documenting a critical problem: the O-rings, rubber seals that prevented hot combustion gases from escaping, became stiff and unreliable in cold temperatures. He had written internal memos about it. He had flagged it to management. He had photographs of previous launches where the seals had shown dangerous erosion. The night before launch, he finally got his teleconference. Thiokol engineers presented their data to NASA managers at Marshall Space Flight Center. Boisjoly argued clearly. His colleague Arnie Thompson sketched diagrams. The data showed a direct relationship between cold temperature and seal failure. The colder it got, the worse the seals performed. NASA's response was not what anyone expected. One manager said, "My God, Thiokol, when do you want me to launch next April?" Another said the data was inconclusive. Another said the charts didn't prove anything definitively. And then something strange happened. Thiokol's management asked NASA for a 5-minute recess. Inside that recess, Thiokol's managers did something that violated every engineering protocol. They polled only the managers, not the engineers. Boisjoly was an engineer. He was in the room. He was not asked. He sat there. He knew what was coming, and there was nothing left to do. They came back 14 minutes later with a different answer. In 1972, a psychologist named Irving Janis published a study of some of the worst decisions ever made by groups of smart people. The Bay of Pigs invasion, the failure to anticipate Pearl Harbor, the escalation of Vietnam. He called what he found groupthink. Groupthink is not stupidity. It's almost the opposite. It happens specifically to cohesive groups, teams with shared identity, shared goals, shared pressure. The smarter and more experienced the group, the more susceptible they can be. Because the smarter you are, the better you are at constructing reasons why the consensus must be right. Janis identified 8 symptoms. We are going to walk through 5 of them, because all 5 happened in that conference room, in order. The first symptom is the illusion of invulnerability. NASA had launched 24 consecutive successful missions. There was a phrase that had taken root inside the agency: normalization of deviance. Each time a seal showed erosion and nothing catastrophic happened, the erosion got reclassified. The anomaly became the norm. The second symptom is collective rationalization. When Boisjoly's charts appeared on screen, the engineers had made a specific analytical choice. NASA managers looked at the same charts and said the data was inconclusive. They were not lying. They genuinely believed it. Because when a group is under pressure to reach a specific conclusion, the mind finds ways to question evidence that points the other way. The third symptom is pressure on dissenters. Boisjoly had been raising this issue for months. He had become the engineer who wouldn't let it go. There is a cost to being that person. The cost is not usually explicit. The cost is social. You feel it in the room. Boisjoly watched his VP say, "Take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat." That one sentence is the entire disaster compressed into 11 words. The engineer, Bob Lund, changed his vote. Thiokol approved the launch. The decision was presented as unanimous. Boisjoly sat in silence. The fourth symptom is self-censorship. After months of being dismissed, engineers at Thiokol stopped raising objections aloud. They still knew what they knew. but knowing something and saying it out loud in that room had stopped feeling like the same thing. The fifth symptom is the illusion of unanimity. When no one objects out loud, silence gets recorded as agreement. That is what happened in the recess. Managers voted, engineers did not. The result came back unanimous. It was not. Irving Janis spent the last years of his career trying to answer the obvious question. If groupthink is this predictable, why can't smart groups just stop doing it? His conclusion was uncomfortable. The same conditions that make a group effective are the conditions that make groupthink inevitable. Shared identity creates loyalty. Loyalty suppresses dissent. Cohesion creates pressure to preserve consensus. And rationalization, in a group of intelligent people, looks exactly like analysis. You cannot tell from the inside whether you are thinking clearly or whether you are constructing reasons to believe what you already want to believe. We did not evolve to be correct. We evolved to belong. The cost of being right and alone was exile. For most of human history, that was the correct calculation. Here is what makes this worse. The data Boisjoly presented that night was not ambiguous. Every single O-ring incident on record had occurred at lower temperatures. The forecast for launch morning was 29 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than any previous launch in history. They were not extrapolating into the unknown. They were launching into a condition with zero successful precedent. Roger Boisjoly testified before the Presidential Commission. He showed them the memos. He showed them the charts. He was called a hero. And then Morton Thiokol reassigned him to a job with no responsibilities, no projects, no team. He spent the rest of his life giving lectures on engineering ethics. He never stopped believing that what happened was preventable. He gave his first lecture 6 months after the disaster. He told students exactly what had happened. He named names. He showed the memos. Morton Thiokol never officially thanked him. Neither did NASA. 7 people boarded that shuttle on the morning of January 28, 1986. They had families. They had trained for years. One of them, Krista McAuliffe, was a school teacher who had been selected specifically because NASA wanted to show ordinary people that space was safe. And in a room the night before, a group of experienced professionals had looked at clear evidence of danger, felt the pressure of the group around them, and found a way to believe what they needed to believe. Not because they were negligent, not because they didn't care, but because the most dangerous thing a group of smart, committed people can do is sit in a room together, under pressure, and try to reach a decision. The O-rings failed at 58 seconds. The decision failed 14 months earlier, and it failed in the most human way possible.